people come to the theater for different reasons. Some come in from the cold to see a reassuring fairy tale. Others come in to forget themselves. Still others come in to learn something about themselves, to accept the challenge of art, and to pull back the facade of everyday life. Kama Ginkas is a director of contrasts and paradoxes. His shows have moments of exquisite beauty, and they have moments that cause great pain and demand a great deal of work from us in order to understand what he is trying to tell us. The Happy Prince is an unusual show for Ginkas. It is one of his most visually beautiful productions. It was designed by Sergei Barkhin, one of Russia's best designers. In Ginkas' hands, Oscar Wilde's The Happy Prince is not the usual fairy tale you might expect. It is a harsh and demanding tale of love and art that the average person does not understand, does not need, nor probably doesn't even want. That means it is a tale about a person who loves alone and creates art alone, and realizes that love and art are rewards unto themselves. One of the things about Kama is he loves anything that has to do with theater. He loves drills. He loves things that are made. He loves things that make noise. I happen to be sitting here on stage right now while stage hands are making all the noise and doing all the work. Kama did a production called Pushkin Duel Death. It's about Alexander Pushkin, the great Russian poet, who was killed in a duel in the 19th century. There's an extraordinary moment when an actor begins cutting apart a sheet on a table. In fact, we perceive this table and this sheet as Pushkin's dead body, and we perceive the action as though it were an autopsy. Until suddenly, Pushkin's friends and fans attack the table and begin ripping apart the sheet. But of course, we as spectators perceive this as though someone is ripping apart Pushkin's body, ripping apart his legacy. The table begins rising into the air, and people hang on to it as though they don't want to let Pushkin get away from them. But eventually, they all fall off the table, and Pushkin, his body, in fact, in the theater, it's a table with some sheets, rises into the air, and he's left alone.
Задача моих спектаклей не давать покоя зрителю, не давать ему жиреть, не давать ему успокаиваться, не давать ему сытно спать и вкушать нечто эстетическое. Теребить, дергать, беспокоить его. Зачем? Это проблема, это проблема. Вот я говорю, что, так сказать, кто-то скажет, зачем ты его дергаешь? Пусть он спокойно существует, комфортно, спокойно. И есть такой взгляд. Не надо беспокоить людей. Зачем беспокоить людей? Я еще раз повторяю. Если человек покоен, если еще его ничего не трогает, он перестает быть человеком. Это жирный матрас. Это кусок мыла. Мыло, знаете, из чего делается? Из костей.
In the 1980s, Ginkas staged an adaptation of Chekhov's novella, Ward Number 6. He called it the Theater of the Watchman Nikita. It's about a man who begins the story as a sane person and begins to be perceived as being insane by others. And as soon as his life falls into the hands of others, it's destroyed utterly and forever. In this show, we see Ginkas's understanding of the way violence can enter into our lives. He never shows us mere violence. In Ginkas's shows, there's always a sense of the philosophy of violence. That violence is a part of our life. It can ruin it, it can destroy it, it can end it, but it cannot be eradicated itself.
Дать понять людям, что они живы. А быть живым – это чувствовать боль, чувствовать радость, чувствовать то, что погода меняется, чувствовать приближение женщины или уход женщины, приближение друга или уход друга, приближение смерти или избавление от смерти. Это и есть жить.
The Lady with the Lapdog has been one of Kama's favorite works. He's staged it in 4 different countries over the last 10 years. He staged it in Turkey, in Helsinki, in Russia, in Moscow at the New Generation Theater. And in the fall of 2003, he staged it at the American Repertory Theater in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The Lady with the Lapdog is the first part of a trilogy that Ginkas is now completing of Chekhov work. The first part is The Lady with the Lapdog. He calls it Morning. The second part is The Black Monk, which he calls Day. And the final part is Rothschild's Fiddle, which he calls Evening. The love that Ginkas shows us in The Lady with the Lapdog is not your typical Hollywood-style love. There's plenty of romance, but it's not romantic love. This is the kind of love that makes demands on people, and people make demands on each other. And when people come together, the ecstasy of love is almost as much pain as it is joy, because love makes demands. That's very much Russian, and that is very much Ginkas. All of Ginkas' shows are very tactile. You can feel the outline of the relationships between people. And he shows you that by having the actors outline themselves or each other with sand, with their hands, with shadows. He's a master of taking such simple things as touching and turning it into something that you actually feel when you're sitting in the hall. He's also a master at bringing crazy humor, almost vaudevillian humor, into the middle of some of the most tragic moments, as the love affair of Anna Sergeyevna and Gurov is being played out tragically. There are two resort bathers who are constantly cutting up, making jokes, interrupting the action. And there's times when you have a tragic scene being played out with humor right at the very same time. Love in The Lady with the Lapdog is probably a kind of despair. It brings a person to despair because love creates such a desire to live, such a desire to feel. And life and love both get away from everyone. Two years ago, when Kama celebrated his 60th birthday here in the theater, he gathered maybe 100 people. What I remember most was what Sergei Barkhin said. Sergei Barkhin being Kama's favorite designer. Bakhim explained that he'd worked with a lot of good directors, done a lot of good shows in his career, which has lasted for about 40 years or more. But that his favorite director is Kama Ginkas. And he said it very simply. He said, the reason I love Kama more than any other director is that whenever I work with Kama, I feel as though it's worth it.
What do you think? This is a theater?
The fact of the matter is that the very first Ginkas show I ever saw was Notes from the Underground, Dostoevsky, 1988, Perestroika, right here on this stage. I remember where I sat. I don't remember exactly where I sat, but I basically sat back in about the 8th or 9th row, right up there. And I remember how amazed I was by this show. I didn't know much about theater at the time, not that I know that much now. But what I did know was that this show really grabbed me. And I could not forget it. Notes from the Underground begins with the words, I am a sick man, I am a spiteful man. For Ginkas, this show was a show about a man who lived outside of society, who lived outside of the masses, who was completely in his own world that did not fit with anybody else's world. It was a world of pain, confusion, loneliness, anger, frustration, into which love came, and the character, of course, as is almost always the case in Ginkas' show, the character was not ready for love, was not able to understand what love could do for him. Kama, in his shows, gives me the impression that all of my senses have been sharpened 150 times over the usual. When I'm watching a show, one of Kama's shows, I feel as though I hear better, I see better, I feel as though my sense of touch is sharpened. My sense of taste is sharpened, smell, everything is sharpened in one of Kama's shows. He has a way of using the most incredibly simple little devices on stage that strike at the heart. He will take a cabbage head and have an actor chop it up with an axe in place of someone killing someone. Crime and Punishment, when Raskolnikov kills the pawnbroker. It's a funny scene. An actor walks out with a head of cabbage and starts chopping it up with an axe. So it's terrifying at the same time. And when he throws you back and forth between the humor and the horror, you feel as though everything you know is brought into sharper focus, and everything you think is made clearer.
Каждый человек пытается, естественно, избавиться от боли. Это естественно. А если что-то болит, как-то закрыть чем-то. Я абсолютно беспощадно ищу эту точку болевую и трогаю ее. Это жестоко, но мне кажется, что я должен это делать. Дальше я обращаюсь к его интеллекту, чтобы объяснить, что же там, почему у него болит. И что это такое, что это за болезнь такая. Потому что, с моей точки зрения, так сказать, больной должен лечиться. А не так, сейчас, как-то так вроде забили, так сказать, обезболивающими. И человек вроде как ходит такой, ведь не больно, но в это время, болезнь-то дальше развивается. Мое дело сказать, у тебя болезнь, у тебя болезнь, у тебя болезнь. Она она не только твоя, она моя сначала всегда. Но у меня такая болезнь, посмотри, нет ли у тебя этой болезни.
То есть ваша цель лечить? Излечить.
Не лечить, обращать внимание.
It's an amazing experience. Another memory. When I attended the premiere of Ki from Crime, which is performed by my wife, Oksana Mysina, I was blown away by the show. I was knocked out. But I thought I had control of myself. And I walked up to Kama after the show to congratulate him. And I put my hand out to him. And he took my hand. And I opened my mouth to say congratulations. And instead of that, I burst into tears. And tears started streaming down my cheeks. And I choked up and I couldn't say anything. And I, embarrassed, shook my head. And Kama says, it's all right. I understand. K.I. from Crime was the second production that Kama did based on Dostoevsky's novel Crime and Punishment. This time, however, he took a very, very small piece of the novel and created a whole show around it. He asked his son, Tatyana Gessen, to write a play based on the character Katerina Ivanovna. This is basically a one-woman show about a woman who is dying. Her husband has just died. She invites guests and neighbors in for a memorial dinner, and while this memorial dinner is going on, she is experiencing the last hours of her life. The guests at the memorial dinner are the spectators of the show.
Прошу, господа. Come in, please. Папаша, гражданский советник, полковник, colonel, almost a general. Но оставался всего один какой-нибудь шаг. Все к нему ездили, говорили, sit down, please.
It's an extremely risky production in which the fourth wall is completely shattered and the spectators become part of the show itself. When I saw Oksana in the show, it was not an enormous surprise because she had been rehearsing and was coming home after rehearsals. She was often frustrated by Kama, and yet she was obviously madly in love with him. I mean, she clearly fell in love with him. There are scenes, television cameras have scenes of Kama and Oksana together, and they're very much a picture of a woman who is in love with a man. She was completely won over by him.
Скоро будет танцевать! Скоро будет петь! Все! Не хочу больше! Все! Малый мозг! Глиссе! Малый мозг! Глиссе!
This is another thing about Kama's shows, is that what he's interested in is that moment of recognition. He may stage a 3-hour show to have a moment when a character recognizes something. By having a character make a recognition of some sort, 400 people, 600 people in the hall will have that same recognition. The Black Monk is another Chekhov story that Kama has dramatized. It's the second part in his Chekhov trilogy, which is called Life is Beautiful. Very ironically, is called Life is Beautiful. The Black Monk is about a scholar, a professor, who at some point in his life believes that he is an extraordinary person, who comes to believe that he may be a genius. And he sees an apparition of a black monk who has been appearing to people for thousands of years. And this black monk tells him he's a genius, and he believes it. He believes that he is higher than life and that he is better than life, than average people. And this, of course, is a tragic mistake on his part. Ginkas often uses the words that life lures. Life lures us and life deceives us. And this is a case of an intelligent, talented man being lured into believing that he is more than he really is. It's an extremely frustrating, tragic moment when a man must realize that he is bound by the limitations that he has. He is bound by the same limitations everyone else has, and by his own limitations. It's a moment of paradox that humans strive to be more than they are and yet cannot be more than they are. This is a typical Ginkas dilemma. It's one that he finds in Chekhov often, and it is one of the most important themes in The Black Monk.
Очень, мне кажется, важное и, мне кажется, очень страшное слово, которое очень любят на Западе, особенно в Америке. Это protection, да?
Да, protection. Все время защищаться.
Защищаться.
Insurance.
Да.
Или застраховываться.
Застраховываться, защищаться.
Да.
Все, застраховаться не может живой человек. Он может, но он перестает быть живым. Можно себя обколоть чем-то все время, как бы все время быть слепым, ходить в чем-то таком-то. Но ты не живешь тогда.
Не живешь.
Можно забором себя закрыть, можно еще что-то, можно не жениться, можно не рожать детей. Ведь жениться это уже проблема. А родить ребенка это чудовищная проблема, это же ответственность ужасная. А зачем? А не надо. Но заметьте, что и в Штатах люди, которые с одной стороны любят страховку и вот это protection, обожают, с другой стороны, обязательно, так сказать, на яхте куда-то, старик 80 лет на яхте, а он же ведь умереть может. Нет, ему надо. Зачем человек это делает? Он только тогда себя чувствует человеком и личностью, когда он испытывает себя. А как только protection, как только страховка, то его и нету. Это один из клиентов страховой компании. такой-то, такой-то, А, Б, В в такой-то карте. Понимаете? Вы абсолютно правильно. Что-то надо сдвинуть и прочистить, чтобы человек мог опять дышать. Чтобы опять мог дышать, чтобы он опять увидел, ой, светло, ой, темно, ой. А завтра надо пойти делать то-то, то-то, а я готов ли или нет. А не так, что все нормально, все хорошо, как бы все хорошо, на самом деле ничего нет.
Ginkas is a miraculous survivor of the Holocaust. He was in the Kaunas ghetto in Lithuania during World War II. He was 6 weeks old when Hitler invaded the Baltic states, and from the age of 6 weeks, Kama was in a Jewish ghetto. It so happened that of the thousands of people in that ghetto, Kama was one of 6 or 8 children who survived.
На этой фотографии я и девочка, мне, наверное, около 2 лет. Сколько лет этой девочке, я не знаю. Фотография сделана в гетто. Эту девочку убили.
Kama often will quote his mother. His mother used to tell him, Kama, you lived in spite of Hitler. Hitler came to kill you, but he was not able to kill you.
This obviously is a strong theme in Kama's life. It's one he never openly worked into his art until the year 2003 when he staged a show called The Dreams of Exile, based on the paintings of Marc Chagall. This was the first time Kama brought out his Jewish background and the problems of the Jewish experience in Eastern Europe into his work.
What Kama does is he helps us, he at least has helped me, see myself better, to see the world in which I live better. Kama's shows have helped me see nuances better, to be aware of nuances, to be aware of paradoxes, to be aware of the difficulty that we have living our own lives. And he's able to take that and make art of it. He's able to, in an hour and a half or 3 hours, depending on the show, he's able to give that a beginning, a middle, and an end, which allows us to experience that frustration and humor and horror and everything that goes into living a life. To experience it in one short period of time and to come out of it feeling cleansed. Kama is famous for his temperament. In one of the rehearsals recently at Rothschild's Fiddle, Kama was talking to his main actor, Valery Barinov, who plays Bronza, and Kama was explaining to the actor that he was playing a man who has a biblical temperament. And as Kama was showing Barinov exactly what he meant by the way he was speaking and the tone of voice and his gestures and the way he was standing, one could see it was very obvious that when Kama talks about characters in his show having biblical temperaments, Kama was talking about himself. Kama himself has a biblical temperament. Kama is capable of flying off the handle instantly. He is capable of filling a 1,000-seat hall with his yells, his shouts, with his anger, and with his laughter. I don't think anyone laughs more quickly than Kama when something funny happens.
В празднике, в воскресенье, покажи руками, грешно было работать.
And another thing about Kama's temperament, which is fascinating, is that it shifts back and forth in seconds, in less than a second, in nanoseconds. There was one rehearsal of Rothschild's Fiddle when an actor
came out on stage and did an ad lib, and everybody cracked up. Kama was laughing so hard he couldn't talk, and at a certain point, Kama realized that this had gotten out of hand, and he had to put a stop to it. And he barked very quickly. He said, "Get back to work!" And boom, the actors were instantly back in character, and instantly work was back. It's something which is very much a part of his work. He will make the actors throw the spectators back and forth between different states. Kama doesn't want spectators to become comfortable. He doesn't want them to become used to a certain manner of speech or action on stage. He wants to throw them out of their rut. He wants to surprise them, catch them off guard. This is very much in Kama's character. This is where Kama's ability to laugh and scream almost in the same second comes from. It's all part of the character of Kama Ginkas.
Спой первое слово и выйди. И ты не сделала, ты спела целый куплет. Потому что ерундой опять занимаешься. Откуда урочина? Какая скрипка? Купила у нее.
Секундочку. Вот сейчас гораздо правильнее. Но вы попадаете все равно в темп эпилога. Вот смотри, на сюртук сделай такой не вверх, на сюртук! На сюртук! Ну надо же на сюртук! Пачка теперь! Да, пачка теперь сюртук! Да, не надо так низко голоса, на сюртук, вот так. Ну, знаешь, обкакался, ну взрослый человек обкакался. Ну.
И слезы!
Молодец!
Вызвал весь глаз на скрипку! Раньше внимательно слушал, ставший к нему боком, скрестив руки на груди, испуганное, недоумевающее выражение на лице сменилось. Скорбным, страдальческим он закатил глаза и как бы, испытывая мучительный восторг, сказал: «На!»
Еще раз!
Вот это мое пространство! Я пою и плевать хотел на ваши гробы!
Было правильно!
Дальше! Но! Когда он пытается повторить!
Яков!
There was one rehearsal when they were rehearsing the finale, and the actor who plays Rothschild, Igor Yasulovich, has to get up and dance around the stage. It's a rather awkward dance because a man, the main character, Bronze, has just died. But the character of Rothschild is torn between happiness because he's just been given a fiddle, and he's also sad because his colleague is dead. Kama was sitting in the hall when Yasulovich began the dance, and clearly Yasulovich wasn't dancing quite exactly as Kama would like to see him dance. And so Kama leaped up from his seat, ran up, jumped up on stage, and began dancing and flinging his arms around together with Yasulovich, trying to show him, rather than tell him, exactly how he wanted him to do it.
Все, спасибо. Спасибо.
Понравилось! В городе!
He wanted him to do it very clumsily. He doesn't want Yasulovich to do this so that it will be a pretty dance.
Купцы и чиновники заставляют играть его по 10 раз!
So here's this wonderful image of Yasulovich dancing as an actor does, with a great deal of grace. And Kama, not being an actor, dancing with a lot less grace, but perhaps dancing with more of the sense of exactly what he's after, of this incredible mix of despair and joy and clumsiness.
Прыгать не удается, потому что немножко староват и трудно перейти, я немножко как-то перехожу и опять танцую очень красиво. Особенно русский песни. Шахтист приглашал его иногда в оркестр.
С платой 50 копеек в день. Стал проникать с ненавистью к Ротшильду, ко всей его братьям.
Правильно.